Unpacking the 2020 Clio Trends Report, episode 147. Are you ready to make your law firm a profit-generating machine that will free up your time and skyrocket your impact? With more than 2 decades of business growth experience and having proven that you can be successful while prioritizing your family and your impact, introducing the Profit with Law podcast. I am your host, the creator of the Firm Differentiator 10X Effect, Moshe Amsel. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Profit with Law podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Amsel, and today I wanted to do something a little bit different. I think I might have done this last year. I don't remember. Recently, Clio released their Clio Trends Report of 2020, and I wanted to spend this episode just going through that report. It's 90 some odd pages, and many of you, even if you know about it, may not have had the time, patience, or anything to go through it. And I think that there's a lot of data in there that is very telling about the industry, about where it's headed, where your clients' mindset is, what they're thinking about, and what you need to think about as a firm owner in retaining market share, getting market share, growing your firm, creating the kind of life that you desire. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through this report, and at times I'm going to summarize. At times I'm going to just read from the report where I think something is important. I've literally combed through the report and highlighted sections. So I want to present that to you in a meaningful manner, and hopefully this is helpful for you. If this is your first time listening to this show, I would appreciate it if you subscribed to the podcast. If you enjoy this episode and you want to hear more, definitely hit that subscribe button. Also, we've got 140 plus episodes in the history of the podcast for you to go and binge listen to. So please be my guest and do that. So I'm going to jump right into the Clio Trends Report of 2020. Here we go. In the first section of the report, there's really not a whole lot to report on. It basically goes through the effects of the pandemic and where law firms stand. The biggest takeaway from it is the last page of the section where it says over half of legal professionals are worried about the success of their law firm. And that basically sums it up in a nutshell that, yes, we're concerned. Which is really important because when we enter into the rest of the report, we need to keep in mind that that's something that is that's on our mind. That's something that we're worried about. So when we start talking about different ways that the data is showing you can improve your firm, or you can improve your prospective your prospects at being successful, or your outcome, you should be paying attention to that. So section number 2, part number 2, goes into gains. And the first thing that they do is they look at various technologies. So it's Clio. So Clio used their technology, but they were looking at 3 technological solutions and the adoption of those solutions in law firms. One is online payments. The second is client portal. And the third is client intake and legal CRM. So real quick, online payments is just the ability to be able to collect money online, whether it's taking credit cards, debit cards, ACH transactions, where the consumer can make their payment digitally. The client portal is where you have a secure location where a client can log in and can communicate with you, can transfer documents, access the latest information on their matter, their case. So that's the client portal. And then finally, the client intake and legal CRM is not a practice management application. It is software that you use during the sales process to document leads that are coming in, to track leads, to make sure that you're not dropping the ball, continue the follow-up process, automate the follow-up process as it makes sense for you, and close the client and bring them in as a new client. So otherwise known as intake. I'm in the business world. I like to call it sales, call it what it is. I hate the fact that lawyers call it intake. It's kind of like it's their people should be begging you to allow you to take them in as a client. That's why it's client intake, right? That the demographic, the profession has changed, and it will continue to change. And the sooner that you can embrace the fact that you're a salesman and you are selling a service and you need to be the best option for the client who's looking for that provider, the easier it's going to be to get new clients. Anyway, went off on a tangent there. That is not in the report. That's my opinion. For online payments, they used Clio Payments in their data research. For client portal, they used Clio Connect. And for the client intake and legal CRM, they used Clio Grow. However, there's plenty of applications out there for each of these solutions, each of these options. And if you're not using Clio, that does not mean that you cannot adopt these in your practice. But here are some interesting points that came out of this report. First of all, those using the technologies studied in this analysis saw much better year-over-year business performance throughout the pandemic. Firms using these technologies also saw an overall greater volume of casework and revenue on a per-lawyer basis throughout 2019 and 2020. Now, the report goes into actual numbers and demonstrating this throughout the rest of this section. But what's important to note is that these three technologies alone, and there's a lot of other technologies you can implement in the practice that can improve your firm, but these three alone had a significant impact, and we're going to see how significant as we progress through this section of the report. So then it goes into a detailed discussion of the benefits of these particular technologies. And here's the impact on annual growth. During the initial months of the pandemic, when law firms saw a dramatic decrease in new casework, firms that used electronic payments saw negative impacts mitigated by up to 5% compared to the previous year. So essentially, having the ability to take online payments mitigated the downside risk or the downside loss in revenue or the decrease in business, the dip that occurred when the pandemic first struck by up to 5%. Firms using electronic payments also saw positive growth in June and opened up to 6% more matters in the summer than firms not using electronic payments. So it also helped you get new business. It helped you get new clients because, if you think about it, there's two primary reasons why that would happen, right? Number one is simply your ability to get those clients, right? If you're not set up to take credit cards and you're trying to run a practice virtually and sign up clients virtually, how are you taking payment? Oh, why don't you write a check and drop it in an envelope and put it in the mail? Oh, you don't have any stamps? Oh, that's okay. We'll wait for you to mail it to us 3 months from now, right? Just think about it. Just the ability to collect payment is one. And number two, people prefer to pay this way. People want to have the ability to pay electronically. So your ability to accept electronic payments makes it more likely that they're going to say yes to you. So here's a stat that is really interesting. Firms using electronic payments collected $10,429 more per lawyer in 2019 and are projected to collect $15,179 more in 2020 per lawyer. So if you're a solo, then you're the per lawyer, right? But if you have a 4-lawyer firm, that difference that's a almost $61,000 revenue difference. Now, obviously, it's different from firm to firm, but if you don't accept electronic payments, you might be losing out on $60,000 of collections in a 4-attorney law firm. So that's a really interesting stat and something you should pay attention to. Now, here's some of the highlights of what electronic payments does, and I might have already cheated on this. Electronic payments benefits case volumes. So basically, by taking electronic payments, it speeds up the process of collection. It speeds up the process of advanced fee deposits, consultation fees, and other fees that are required. And what that does is that also frees you up to be able to serve the clients more, frees up your energy, frees up your time, which allows you to pass more cases through the firm. It also benefits revenue collection. So many firms end up losing money because they're simply unable to collect on unpaid invoices. Electronic payments allows you to streamline that process, take payments more timely, and therefore be less likely to have a significant write-off from your accounts receivable. Now let's move on to client portal. So the client portal adoption, firms using client portals mitigated the negative impact on caseloads by 5% during the initial onset of the pandemic. Sounds very similar, right? In April. In the following months, firms using client portals continued to perform better than firms not using client portals by at least 2% and saw positive growth in June. So very similar numbers, and you're going to see that as we go through each of these technologies, you're going to start to see some similarities in how much each of these helps. But when we get to the end of this part, you'll see that when we put them all together, that it starts to make a compounding effect, a compounding difference. Here's some numbers for you. Firms using client portals collected $16,556 more per lawyer in 2019 and are projected to collect $23,587 more in 2020. Now, interestingly, these numbers are higher than the electronic payment. And so why is it? Why are client portals something that is such a revenue generator? Well, here are a couple of the reasons why that might be. So first of all, client portals support the transition from in-person to remote client services. And by using client portals, it ensures that matter information is stored securely in an online environment that's accessible to both the lawyer and the client, regardless of their location. So what that does is it creates greater client satisfaction, and it therefore one of the things that greater client satisfaction does for you is it creates Google reviews or reviews on any platform, positive word on the street about the law firm, which in turn means more business. Also, client portals improve revenue collection. Firms using client portals may be able to spend more time on billable work and to create the types of positive client experiences that result in more positive reviews and referrals. So those kind of go hand in hand. But basically, by being able to support more people remotely, you can handle more clients. You have more time to spend on clients. You're able to collect better because you're not in dispute with the client as much because they're having a better experience, and you get more positive reviews and referrals. All in all, a package that means more business for you. Finally, client intake and CRM adoption. And I'll be honest with you, I am surprised that the numbers they share in this section are not higher. Generally, unless you have a small lead flow, generally business owners, not just lawyers, but business owners in general are awful at following up on sales. And therefore, if you're not using a CRM, you're not using a system to track leads and track where you're at with the lead communication process, chances are you're losing out on sales. You're losing out on new clients. So I would venture to say that even though this is a data that they compiled from an analysis of 2,000 surveys or whatever the quantity is, I would venture to say that these numbers probably edge higher. So the first thing that they share is that firms who are using CRM solutions saw as much as a 6% year-over-year difference in April, 7% in July, and 9% in August compared to firms not using client intake and CRM solutions. So even during a pandemic, these firms saw growth during those times where other firms may not have seen that same year-over-year increase in business by using these softwares. And here's a stat for you. Firms using client intake and CRM software collected $15,124 more per lawyer in 2019 and are projected to collect $27,304 more in 2020. Now, each of these, let's just go through why the intake and CRM helps is going to create those numbers. So first, it helps to generate new casework. In competitive markets, these solutions enable quicker engagement with potential clients, allowing them to book appointments directly into the firm's calendar. It also provides an advantage over other firms that take longer. As a matter of fact, last year, in the 2019 Clio Trends Report, there was a statistic that was, just grabbed by the vendors in the market, the legal marketplace, and I've even highlighted a number of times on the podcast here, as well as in other trainings that we do, which is that they contacted 2,000 law firms as if they were a potential client looking for, for a provider. And 66%, so just about 2/3 of the 2,000 firms either never returned a voicemail or never called back after the initial call, so they never followed up, which is crazy to think about, right? And also highlights the market potential, the market opportunity, that if you had a system in place, if you had something there to make sure that the ball wasn't dropped, the phone was answered, the message was retrieved, that you can significantly improve your performance by just simply responding, by simply answering the phone or calling them back. So having the CRM to expedite the process and make you answer the phone faster, make you respond to them faster, get back to them faster, have better follow-up, is going to set you apart from other law firms and is going to help you get new cases. Also, client intake and CRM improves new client engagement. So basically, it's a better experience. This can accelerate the engagement process and creates more commitment to pursuing a legal problem by the prospect, by the client. And finally, client intake and CRM reduces the number of lost client opportunities. But it creates a system for streamlined contact management and communications with potential clients, helping ensure follow-ups that keep legal issues top of mind. Now, what's important is I want to point out that it says helping ensure follow-ups that keep legal issues top of mind. Understand that sometimes you lose a sale not because somebody went with another firm, but because they decided or didn't decide not to pursue the legal action. So by failure to follow up, you allowed them to just be human and forget about their problem because it was no longer a pressing need in their life. Sometimes somebody reaches out to you because they reached a point of no return, but then they get past that on their own because you didn't respond fast enough or they just didn't get to that solution fast enough, and now they've been able to tuck the problem away and kind of ignore it. And that's another risk that we have when we get to the last section, which is talking about the affordability and access to legal by the greater population. You're going to see how bad this problem is. But basically, if somebody, is not sure they can afford it and they're not sure what the value is in pursuing it, they might just let it go. They might just not take another step in that direction. So really important to recognize that follow-up is not just about the competition. It's also about getting somebody to continue to pursue a legal action. Now, I told you that multiple technologies are where the real bang for the buck is. Now, obviously, we can't add the three numbers together that we highlighted. That would be really cool if we could. But here's the data. Firms using multiple legal technology solutions, that means two or more of the solutions we just shared, collected $19,541 more per lawyer in 2019 and are projected to collect $37,622 more in 2020. And I would venture to say that these numbers are not just from the specific technologies, but also from who is the law firm owner that is implementing these technologies, right? The person who is implementing these technologies is forward thinking. They're embracing the market. They care about where their firm is going. They care about the future. So I think that those firm owners are making better decisions in the operation of the business. It's not just what these technologies give you, but it's the whole package. When you start to have a lawyer that is implementing all these technologies in their firm as part of how they serve their clients, that is what creates the better business opportunities and the greater efficiency within the firm. These are huge numbers, right? So 19,500 last year. Let's say the projections are wrong. Let's say the numbers are the same as last year. So let's say you're at 20 grand extra per attorney. You have a 4-attorney firm. That's an extra $80,000 in revenue that you're just not getting right now. And what does this software cost? Right? And I don't know what the cost of these specific applications are, but let's just say that the cost is $2,000 per attorney, right? So it costs you $8,000 to generate $80,000 more. It's a no-brainer, right? You gotta embrace technology, and you gotta recognize that this is the future. The adoption of cloud-based and client-centered technologies can have real impacts on firm performance. That's the end of the second part of the Clio Trends Report. Now, the third section is understanding interaction between lawyers and clients. And I love this section because it really starts to highlight the differences between how you think of what's important for the law firm and what your clients are thinking is important. And that's really important for you to see, because until you are prioritizing your clients' needs to be first, it's going to be a struggle for you to have a good match in the marketplace with clients. And that means you're going to be losing business along the way. So for this section, Clio uses a max diff analysis, which, without going into their detailed explanation of what it is, they basically ask a series of questions in the survey that they did to gather this data. And the questions are pitting two things against each other. So contrasting and saying which of these is more important to you. And by doing that, it helps arrive at a determination of which of these, which on this list, how important, what is the most important, what's the least important. And basically it assesses a score called a max diff score to each of these. So what they did was they did an analysis of what defines law firm success, and this is to the attorney, right? So, what does the law firm owner think defines a law firm success? And the number one thing on this rank is making clients happy and satisfied. Number one, with a max diff score of 42%. Now, the last thing on the list is hiring more lawyers and staff. Hiring more lawyers and staff is the bottom on the list. Now, before we start jumping to any conclusions or analysis of why is this, I'm just going to fill in the blanks in between. The second to most important attribute defining law firm success is ensuring job security. The third is achieving work-life balance. The fourth is ensuring wellness of practice members. The fifth is bringing in more new clients. The sixth is exceeding last year's revenue. Now, that's where the max diff score is 3%, and then it goes to negative. So the rest of these are a negative score, which essentially means that most attorneys felt that these were unimportant, or these were not. These were least important in defining a law firm's success, and they are ensuring legal help for those who need it, streamlining and reducing overhead costs, matching last year's revenue, and like I said, the last one, hiring more lawyers and staff. So let's dive into this some more and start to try to understand this data as I struggle to turn over the page here, but bear with me. Okay, so for comparison, in 2018, increasing firm revenue was the most common goal for lawyers surveyed. And this year, increasing revenue or exceeding last year's revenues, increasing revenue was right in the middle. It was that 3% number that I highlighted. And then beyond that, we went negative on the max diff. Okay. In 2019, 87% of lawyers wanted to see their firms grow, and revenue and client base were the top two areas that they wanted to see grow. So notice, making clients happy, client satisfaction was not high on the list in 2018, 2019. Now it is. Revenue, keeping the same as last year or exceeding last year's, was top of mind in both 2018 and 2019, and yet was near the bottom in 2020. Now, that indicates that at least part of why legal professionals define their firm's success based on the satisfaction of their clients is because they also view positive referrals and reviews as key drivers of new business. So the industry is changing in that lawyers are starting to recognize that happy clients means growth in their law firm. So rather than focusing on the growth itself, let me focus on client satisfaction, and that'll lead to more growth. So that's one interesting point there. Also, among consumers, positive reviews or personal recommendations are the most important factors when considering the hireability of a lawyer. That's interesting, right? Because those two work together. So lawyers are starting to wise up to recognize that clients are relying on these reviews, they're relying on these referrals to make their determination whether to use them, and therefore they are prioritizing that. Now, they did this max diff analysis from the lawyer's perspective and from the consumer's perspective on how law firms achieve success according to lawyers, and on how hireable a lawyer is according to a consumer. Now, what I love about this is the same list of options for each of these, right? So we can see which the lawyer thought was most important and least important, and which the consumer thought was most important and least important. And what's interesting is that as far as most important and least important goes, the lawyers and the consumers are on the same page. So, according to lawyers, the most important attribute is getting client referrals and reviews. That is the most important attribute for a law firm to achieve success. According to consumers, what makes a lawyer the most hireable? What is the highest percentage chosen? Having good reviews, recommendations. So those two are the same. They are the same, right? Then dead last for a lawyer, having a commercial office space. Dead last, and whether you think that is important for you to achieve success. Guess what? Consumers think the same thing. Having a commercial office space is the least important decision factor in the hireability of a lawyer. So those of you who think that you need an office in order for somebody to hire you because they need to see your office, you're wrong. Consumers were surveyed, and you're just wrong. So uh, this is really interesting and it's uncommon, by the way, in these reports that Clio has been reporting, for consumers and lawyers to be on the same page, both at the top and the bottom. Now, what's interesting is that when you get to number 2, 3, 4, and 5, that's where things start to get interesting because they're very different. So, according to lawyers, what drives your success after getting client referrals and reviews, the next thing is using software to organize firm operations, serving the community, offering services at fixed fees, and then accepting electronic payments by credit or debit. You know what? I'll run through the whole list. Then using cloud technology to store firm information, then supporting electronic documents and e-signatures, then offering payment plans, then offering lower prices and discounts, then offering unbundling legal services, and offering subscription plans for legal services. Now, notice offering lower prices and discounts was fourth to last. Offering payment plans, fifth to last. And actually, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on the list. And it's got a minus 6% on the max diff score, the payment plans, right? On the consumer side, hireability of a law firm, having good reviews and recommendations we covered is number 1. Number 2, offering lower prices, discounts. Okay, offering lower prices and discounts was negative 22% on the max diff score from an attorney's perspective. From a client's perspective, 25%. Number 2. So from fourth to last to number 2. Number 3, offering payment plans, 19% max diff score. And on the lawyer side, it's a minus 6. Okay, so you're starting to get the drift, right? Offers fixed fees is number 4. Notice the client is most interested in good reviews and recommendations. They want to know that they're hiring a good attorney. And then once they know they're hiring a good attorney, they care about the cost, whether it's lower prices, discounts, payment plans, fixed fees. Those are the most important things for them. Then they've got serving the community. So you're pretty close there, right? It's 12% for the lawyers. It's 10% for the consumer. So serving the community is important to both. Then allowing electronic payment by credit or debit card. Also very similar on the list. For consumers, it's minus 3%. It's right there at the cusp of, it's the middle one. And for lawyers, you rated it 10%, but it's also right there on the cusp. But let's go through the rest of the consumer list. Supports electronic documents and e-signatures, offers unbundled legal services, uses software to organize firm operations, uses cloud technology to store firm information, offers subscription plans for legal services. So for those of you who are looking to do subscription plans, you want to make sure you do your market research, because according to this subset of the customers or the consumers that were surveyed, it's pretty low on the list. However, payment plans are high on the list. So, and we'll go into pricing structures and what this means in a different section. But I want to point out that using software to organize the firm operations, using cloud technology to store firm information, those are close to the bottom of the list. As far as the consumer is concerned, it's the same as a commercial office space. Well, not exactly the same, but it's down there in that I don't care category. And the reason is very simple, because the consumer wants 2 things. They want a good attorney at a good price, or an affordable or some way that they can pay for it. And everything else is less important to them. They don't really, they not that they don't care, but it's less important for them as far as the hiring decision goes on whether or not you've got everything all put together on your digital electronic systems, right? Now, obviously, this does not negate what we talked about in the earlier section, where we talked about how powerful it is to have a client portal, how powerful it is to be able to take electronic payments. They're not necessarily great factors in the hiring process, but they definitely have an effect in how you serve your client, the client satisfaction, and the ability to collect, right? So at the end of the day, lawyers care deeply about their clients and their outcomes, and that's obvious from this data, and that's a great thing. So we're heading in the right direction, but we need to kind of shift our focus a little bit and start to recognize that the consumer cares about the cost of getting legal representation, and we're going to spend an entire section talking about that. So the next section, their section number 4, is talks about the adoption of technology and how important technology is. And the first thing that the report tries to do is demonstrate that there is a misconception in, as far as lawyers are concerned, there's a misconception about whether or not the client base, the target market, is there to make use of the technology. And, we tend to think about how difficult it was 10 years ago to get grandma to use a smartphone. But what you're forgetting is that, even 90-year-olds now they have smart devices. They know how to use them. They've learned. It might have taken them longer, but they've learned. So being able to serve somebody in any age bracket, in any demographic electronically, is something that is more possible than you probably have considered or thought about. I think the bigger issue is in demographics where they don't have the means to have a device, or they don't have the means to have the internet access. And therefore they don't have the ability to interact with the firm or with the courts in the new methods that are being used with the new technologies. So let's go right into this. The client-centered innovation has gone online. It's clear that 2020 has accelerated technology adoption to the point where online interactions have become a baseline requirement for any business. In the United States, 90% of adults use the internet. 81% own a smartphone, and the use of smart home devices is growing at a rate of 31% per year. 58% of consumers said that technology is more important to them now than before the coronavirus pandemic. 52% of consumers say they use more types of technology tools now than before the coronavirus pandemic. 50% of consumers say they're more comfortable with technology now than before the coronavirus pandemic. 53% of consumers say cloud technology is a necessity. Now, I'm just going to highlight a case in point, right? Pretty much every single family has used Zoom for something, whether it's for your child attending class, or whether it's for you to attend business meetings or to meet with your own clients or potential clients, or it's been for you to attend a family birthday or a family wedding. So, these technologies that nobody would have had a need to use before have suddenly become mainstream adoption, and everybody knows how to use it, and everybody's comfortable with using it because they've been forced to. I could think of my own example. I never did home delivery of groceries. I just assumed that the cost was too great, and it wasn't worth it. Having used it during the pandemic because I had no choice, and we didn't know what was okay, what wasn't okay. So we basically hunkered down in the house and didn't leave. So we had our groceries delivered here. We were even wiping down everything that came, wiping down all the groceries because we didn't know how this virus was being transmitted. But it was eye-opening to the fact that it was not really much more expensive to have it delivered. And my, did we save a lot of time. Besides for now, obviously, just like anybody else, I love going to Costco and walking around the aisles. So that form of entertainment is not going to be replaced by somebody delivering it. But if you think about the time savings of being able to just duplicate an order you've already placed in the past, make a couple of changes, literally within 5 to 10 minutes, I had my entire weekly or biweekly grocery shopping for the family done by just submitting an order and then waiting for it to get delivered. I didn't have to leave the house. I didn't have to get in a car, drive to the store. I didn't have to waste practically an hour to 2 hours of my time going through the store. And when you walk through the store, you tend to buy things that you weren't planning on buying because there's impulse buys that happen when you're walking through a store. Those weren't happening because I wasn't walking through the store. So, that's those are just a couple of personal examples that, hey, look, there are technologies that were available before, but we just didn't have a reason to try them or do them. But now that we've tried them, we're comfortable with it. We're happy to use it. So, embrace the technology. So, here's some of the technology that's going to shape the client experience for you. Video conferencing. Many consumers, 37%, prefer to meet virtually with a lawyer for a consultation or first meeting, and 50% would rather conduct follow-up meetings through video conferencing. 56% of consumers would prefer video conferencing over a phone call. Now, I'm highlighting this because it's really eye-opening. You might assume that consumers would rather meet you in person. You might assume that they want to come into the office. And the reality is they don't. Now, maybe for the first meeting, right, 37% prefer to meet virtually for a consult or a first meeting. So maybe for the first meeting, the majority still wants to meet you face-to-face, shake hands, and get to see you. But then after that, half of them would rather the rest of your meetings happen over video conferencing. Now, imagine how much more efficient you would be if you didn't have to have somebody entertain somebody as they walk through the door. You didn't have to be there physically present to meet with them. You could literally just hop onto video conference and meet with them anywhere you are. The second thing, electronic payments. The majority of consumers, 65%, prefer to pay using electronic forms of payment, such as credit cards, debit cards, online payment systems, such as, here's a plug for their thing, Clio Payments, PayPal, or Apple Pay, over cash or check. And finally, electronic document management. The majority of consumers, 69%, prefer working with a lawyer who can share documents electronically through a web page, app, or online portal. Many electronic document systems now offer seamless e-signature services as well. And now, whether or not those e-signature services are acceptable in your specific jurisdiction for your specific area of law, I'm not getting into that in this document or this conversation, but it's important to start to recognize that we're there. The industry is there. The consumer is there. They're ready. And it's time to embrace tech. Now, this is important too. The perception of legal in 2020. You might have made major advances in in tech adoption in your law practice, but here's what people think about you. The legal profession has not been known for rapid technology adoption. In fact, lawyers are often perceived as operating their business through relatively archaic means. This is illustrated by survey data on consumer perceptions of tech adoption among law firms. Only 29% of consumers think most lawyers can access firm information online. Only 29% of consumers believe most lawyers are able to securely share documents and allow e-signatures online. Only 26% of consumers think most lawyers are meeting with clients virtually. Only 40% of consumers believe most lawyers accept electronic payment through credit or debit, and only 42% of consumers think most lawyers use computer software at their firms, which is wild to me to think about, that there is 58% of the people out there, the consumers out there, that think that lawyers are operating without computer software. Just crazy. Lawyers have embraced technology in 2020. Now, the vast majority, 85% of law firms, are using software to manage their practice, and 79% of lawyers rely on cloud technology to store their firm's data. Additionally, 62% of firms allow clients to securely share and sign documents electronically. 73% allow clients to pay invoices electronically, and 83% of firms are meeting with clients virtually. So notice there's a big discrepancy between the perception and what you're actually doing. So the vast majority of legal professionals say they will continue using these technologies beyond the pandemic, and 84% of legal professionals say they could serve their clients even better if more parts of their practice were automated with technology. So just quickly, lawyers planning to use technology beyond the pandemic, 96% of lawyers plan to continue to store their firm data in the cloud. 95% plan to support electronic documents and e-signatures beyond the pandemic. 96% plan to continue accepting electronic payments. 96% plan to use practice management software, and 83% plan to continue meeting clients through video conferencing. So contrary to public opinion, what lawyers are doing, what you guys are doing, is actually embracing this technology and planning to continue to use it moving forward. So the shift to cloud-based service is more than a coping mechanism for 2020. It is going to be an everlasting change. It's going to be a new shift for the industry, and it's going to change the way that we do business. Now, we've also highlighted that there is a communication gap, right? There's a perception gap that needs to be communicated with the audience. So this should be telling to you that it might be worth your while to start highlighting some of these things in your marketing, which you take for granted, and just assume that, hey, they don't need to know the inner workings of my firm. But maybe you should talk in your marketing about, that you're using all this technology, that you meet clients virtually, that you accept, electronic payments. Those are selling points that you may not have realized are important to the consumer, and now you do. Now, let's talk about the markets. This is part 5 of the Clio Trends Report, and this is where we're going to talk about affordability and your pricing structure. And this is a really important conversation to have. I know we're going long. I actually considered splitting this into 2 episodes, but I couldn't find a good place to split it. So we're just going to run through and finish it, and hopefully you'll forgive me for this being a really long one. But I think this is great information to have. It's great data. And if you haven't had the time to go through the 90 some odd page document, then still spending less than 1 hour with me on this would be well worth it. So prior to the pandemic, according to research conducted by the Federal Reserve on the economic well-being in U.S. households, in 2018, 39% of Americans didn't have funds available to pay for a $400 emergency expense. Okay, that's crazy. But if you think about it, 39% of Americans didn't have funds to pay for a $400 emergency expense. In 2013, this number was even higher at 50%. Given that the average rate for a lawyer in the U.S. is $290 per hour, the research from the Federal Reserve indicates that the average American couldn't afford to deal with a legal issue that would require more than 1.4 hours of a lawyer's time. And we both know that there's very few legal issues that would only require 1.4 hours of a lawyer's time, right? So practically any legal issue is out of grasp for somewhere between 39 and 50% of the population. In July, 61% of consumers said they would not be able to afford to deal with a legal problem. The fact that so many legal problems aren't pursued indicates that there are larger, more structural issues within the profession itself. And I couldn't agree with this more. These issues are characterized by the fact that legal services have been delivered in a way that's been unaffordable, inconvenient, and difficult for potential clients to know whether they have a legal problem worth pursuing in the first place, all of which function as critical barriers to hiring a lawyer. So if you think about it, the reality is that even if somebody could afford it, they don't know if they can afford it because historically, as a profession, lawyers don't do a good job of letting them know what the total cost is going to be because, hey, I bill by the hour and whatever amount of time it takes is what it's going to be. So it's this open-ended risk that somebody's entering into, and therefore they're unable to even start because they don't know where it's going to end. So these challenges indicate a critical product market fit problem within the legal industry. That is, the average lawyer delivers legal services in a way that is fundamentally outdated when compared to the needs of today's clients. 78% of consumers, now this is, there's a section titled, "There is More Than One Dimension to Affordability," and I think it's important to highlight this because it's not whether or not they could afford your legal services. And I kind of started talking about this a moment ago, but 78% of consumers say that lawyers should adopt pricing and repayment models that will make legal services more affordable. But affordable, quote unquote, is about more than just an overall price. Survey data shows that 40% of law firms regularly reduce prices or offer discounts to clients, While reducing prices and offering discounts may be a short-term solution to a client's inability to pay the bill and may even improve their satisfaction, there are a number of drawbacks for the law firm. We all know that these drawbacks exist, but I'm going to highlight them here for you. Number one, expectations for future reductions and discounting, right? So once you discount, they come to expect it. Revenue unpredictability. If you don't know what discounting you're going to do, you're unable to predict your revenue because who knows where the chips are going to fall when you're done with your discounting. Devaluing legal services. When you discount, you're devaluing legal services, and that can have significant negative impact on firm revenues. And then lost client opportunities. Clients consider price when hiring a lawyer. So if you're giving them a higher price and then discounting it later, then you're essentially potentially losing clients at the beginning because the barrier to entry was too high. Had you led with your discounted price, maybe you would have closed more clients. We don't know, but that's definitely a poor way to operate because you're creating an unnecessary barrier to new clients being able to be retained by you. So what's the solution to this problem, right? If discounting is not the answer, what is the answer? And there's a few options out there, a few things to think about. But one is payment plans. Payment plans provide flexibility. 72% of consumers would prefer to pay their legal fees via a payment plan. 53% of law firms are equipped to offer payment plans. Now, I'm gonna get back to payment plans in a moment because I want to tie all these together first, and then we'll get back to payment plans in just a moment. But the other thing is transparent pricing creates predictability for consumers and for lawyers. What does transparent pricing mean? So let's talk about this. Flat fees. Flat fees, typically associated with a more productized format for professional services, make pricing simpler, more transparent, and more predictable for clients, which in turn makes it easier for clients to plan for and pay for legal services. Cost predictability helps consumers determine whether they have the funds available to pursue their legal issue. Knowing how much it will cost and when payments will be due helps them prepare the required funds, and it may also give them the information necessary to make a cost-benefit evaluation on whether pursuing the matter will provide the value they are looking for. This transparency gives them more confidence in their decision to move forward with a legal matter and reduces the need to dispute or request discounts on bills in which they had no prior insight. Many lawyers are in fact offering fixed fee billing structures, but past research indicates that transparency may still be an issue among many firms, meaning you have a portion of what you do is fixed fee, but you're not communicating that well with your potential clients. Based on an in-depth study of lawyer responsiveness included in the 2019 Legal Trends Report, where a random sample of 1,000 law firms were contacted by email and 500 were contacted by phone, 73% wouldn't provide information on rates and fees through email, and 43% wouldn't discuss rates and fees over the phone. So if you think about that, if the consumer, their number one priority is to be able to determine whether it's worth it to pursue this legal action, and then you're not willing to give them a price for what they need to get done, then how are they supposed to make that decision? No wonder they're not retaining legal services. No wonder they're deciding just not to move forward. As a key ranking factor that determines a lawyer's hireability, providing more cost transparency up front with clients will help clients make better decisions with regards to pursuing their legal problems. This transparency may involve developing a rate sheet of fixed prices for individual services and being more forthcoming of them, but it could also take the form of estimates on hourly work. Now, there's a couple of other alternative billing structures. One is unbundling legal services. Unbundling legal services is definitely one way to help make this more affordable. And then another is subscription-based services where a subscription is paid and kind of you use the average usage of all your clients across the board. So some people will actually get more for their money than others, but you provide the same essentially the same fee per month for all of the clients across the board. Now, rather than donating or discounting their services, the models discussed above ensure a more sustainable and profitable business model for law firms while also increasing consumer access to legal services. Beyond pricing structures, there's also an opportunity for forward-thinking lawyers to put their money toward leaner, more efficient, and more client-centered legal services that avoid or at least reduce high-cost expenses tied to brick-and-mortar business structures. In turn, passing these cost savings on to clients will make legal services more accessible to underserved portions of the market. Transferring cost savings in this way avoids devaluing a lawyer's time and maintains profitability. So even here, we're going back to this, hey, you don't need an office space, right? That's simply costing you money. You could be passing those savings on to your clients. So I want to go back in this conversation about cost and pricing. We talked about payment plans, and one of the numbers that they said is 53% of law firms are equipped to offer payment plans. Well, I just learned today in a conversation that I had. So I've been talking to vendors who are potential sponsors of our upcoming summit in February. And one of the people I spoke to today has a new product on the market. And the website is lawfunder.com. It's interesting spelling. It's LAWFUNDAR.com. I'm going to link this up in the show notes, but essentially what they do is they provide the ability for you to offer payment plans to your clients, and there's a very, very small fee to the firm, but essentially the firm is not taking on the risk of those payment plans. The reason why Clio has 53% of law firms are equipped to offer payment plans is because it's simply a matter of and not just being able to have the technology to do it, but it's also being able to have the bankroll to be able to sustain that. In other words, if you provide legal services to somebody and they're only on payment plan number 2, and they have a 6-pay plan and they only made 2 payments, and you're done with providing your services and they disappear or declare bankruptcy or whatever, then you're just out of luck. Like the money is gone. But with this new service, essentially, your cost is 5%. So essentially, for 5% of the fee, they can set up a payment plan with LawFunder, and then you can collect the money up front. So there's really no excuse, right? And the perfect example is, so if you take the flat fee cost and then you put that together with a payment plan, you've made it like a no-brainer. You've made it really easy for somebody to determine whether or not this is something they can afford from a cash flow perspective. Is this something they can afford to pay over time to be able to get the legal services that they need? And the perfect example of this model is the Peloton bike. Some of you may not be familiar with it, but many of you probably are Peloton riders. I have a Peloton bike myself. I got it last year right before the holiday season. And when I went to buy it, there was a very, very easy decision to move forward because they took the price of the bike and gave you a 0% 5-year payment plan. So essentially, my $1,800 something bike only cost me $60 something a month, and that's like $60 a month. That's I don't have to think about that, right? That's just one dinner. Like even if I have trouble one month with the $60, I just decide to go out one less time, or I just skimp a little bit on my grocery shopping, and boom, we've got $60. So that it really made it a no-brainer for me to make that decision, to make that purchase, because that monthly payment was so digestible. We at the beginning of this section, we talked about how there's a large percentage of the population that doesn't even have $400 set aside for emergencies. But what if you can make them, what if you can provide legal services for over 6 months at $300 a month, and they can come up with that extra $300 a month? Well, suddenly they can afford $1,800 of legal services that, had you just proposed $1,800, they would not have been in the position to do. So This is, it's really exciting that there are products in the marketplace that can allow you to make this happen. And then as far as, flat fees go, I recently learned about Rally, and I think their website is rallynow.io. And Rally takes various components that you do within your practice and turns them into products that somebody can just purchase. So if you have certain documents that you charge to draft those documents and prepare it for the client, they have software that can automate that process and allow somebody to literally just check out and buy it online. And then you simply just need to review the final product and give your stamp of approval, or maybe even not, depending on what it is that you're doing and how you're providing it and how you're pitching it. But there are more and more tools available in the marketplace and in your arsenal that allow you to start to provide this type of access to legal services that you couldn't provide before, because suddenly they're more affordable, because suddenly they're unbundled, they're flat fee, there's payment plans, and now the consumer is more in a position to be able to take advantage of it. So the last section talks about the future of the law firms. I'm just going to give you broad strokes highlights here. Really, we covered everything we needed to cover. 76% of legal professionals believe that legal services can be streamlined when conducted virtually. 37% of legal professionals say most, if not all, lawyers should run their practice virtually. 7% of legal professionals let go of their commercial office space after the pandemic began, and 12% are unsure if they will keep their commercial office space in the future. The future is cloud. The future is technology. The future is remote servicing. Even the courts are opening all kinds of options to doing things virtually. I talk about this a lot, but DocuSign purchased a company, and I forget the name of the company right now, but they purchased a company that does secure video conference, which means that basically when multiple parties join the video conference, it does a check to determine if that person really is the person that they say that they are, and it's able to create this secure environment where everybody is a verified participant, and then using DocuSign technology, a document can be signed with multiple parties there. So the reason that they purchased this company is to create an electronic remote notary service that everybody would be able to accept, because you can verify that indeed those are the people there. I mean, that's the whole purpose of a notary, is to verify somebody's identity when they're signing a document. And then the notary can notarize it. So that is some really exciting stuff. That is, that's the future of law. So firms paying upwards of $10,000 or $20,000 per lawyer in office space may be able to find better ways to spend their money. And if you start saving that money per lawyer, it starts to add up. Okay, if you're a solo, that's, it's not huge, but when you start to compound that over multiple lawyers, you have a 10 lawyer practice, 20 lawyer practice, and you're saving $20,000 per lawyer on a $20,000 lawyer. 20 lawyer practice, you're talking about a $400,000 savings, or $200,000 to $400,000 savings in a year. Is that office necessary? Is it really required to be able to provide the level of service that you need? And if you tell me, well, hey, we need a conference room, we got to have a place where we can meet, where deals can be done, where guess what? There's Regis, there's WeWork, there's places where you can go and have access to a conference room, and be able to still have that. So I hope that going through the 2020 Legal Trends Report from Clio and sharing that with you and highlighting the most important aspects of it and giving my opinion along the way, hopefully this was helpful to you. This was eye-opening to you. And we've got some really, really good guest interviews coming up. I'm really excited about the lineup that we have right now. This coming Thursday, we are going to have, who are we going to have this Thursday? We're going to have Marco Brown on the podcast. And it's just one example of the interviews we have coming up. The week after that, we've got Jim Armstrong. Really excited about his interview because it's going to captivate you. I mean, just the conversation that I had with him, I'm still thinking about it now, and it's been a few weeks since I did the interview with him. This is just great stuff, and we just have more and more great guests coming our way, and we're just going to keep bringing them your way as we start to wrap up 2020. So enjoy the rest of your week. We'll catch you on Thursday, and please share this with a friend if you got value out of this episode or any of the episodes in our podcast library. Share it with a friend. Spread the word. If you share it with one person and every other listener shares it with one person, we can double our listener base in just one episode. So I'd love it if you would take a moment and do that, and have a great day. Have you been enjoying the show? We sure hope so. To make sure you never miss an episode, be sure to hit the subscribe button in your podcast player app. Next week, we will be back with more valuable resources and ideas on how to break the mold and take your law firm to the next level.